Soy Antonio Navarro, el decano de la Facultad de Ciencias Económicas y Empresariales, y en nombre de todo el equipo de Canal, daros la bienvenida a esta, yo creo que excepcional conferencia que vamos a tener hoy de Mr. Olli Rehn, al que posteriormente se presentará como es debido. Daros las gracias por la asistencia a este acto, a todo el claustro de profesores que nos acompañáis y especialmente a los estudiantes, especialmente a los estudiantes de los diferentes grados. La verdad es que tenemos aforo completo, pero no esperábamos que viniera todo el aforo que se había apuntado al acto de hoy. Digo que no esperábamos, no, que habitualmente siempre hay un porcentaje, pero hoy hemos entrado en overbooking. Pediros disculpas a aquellos que no, bueno, pues podéis acompañarnos, digo, porque no tengáis asiento. En cualquier caso, el acto se va a retransmitir en directo y vais a tener la oportunidad de verlo posteriormente. Daros también las gracias a todas las instituciones que nos acompañáis en este acto y muy particularmente a quien ha organizado este acto, que es con el máximo cariño, pues evidentemente nuestra querida Maricruz Arcos, que es la directora del Centro de Documentación Europea de la Universidad de Sevilla, al que a continuación le daré la palabra. Bueno, yo creo que la conferencia que vamos a tener hoy es una conferencia muy interesante por el momento geopolítico en el que nos encontramos. Supongo que alguna pregunta haréis en torno a algo que parece que habíamos olvidado, como eran los aranceles, pero que hoy otra vez han vuelto a la escena comercial, política y económica, entre otras cuestiones. Por tanto, yo creo que qué mejor momento para tener la visión de uno de los máximos expertos y de las personas que más ha contribuido al desarrollo de la Unión Europea. Tiene la palabra a continuación nuestra querida Maricruz Arcos.
Thank you very much, dear Dean. Muchas gracias, señor decano, and thank you very much to this faculty, because always the European Documentation Center proposed to do any activity here, always have been hosted with warmly host. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to the GRC, to the Joint Research Center, to facilitate this opportunity to have the Governor Rehn here to work with the students in an informal session, just to have a meeting about some general problem of the European Union, of general challenge of the European Union, as we have today in the title of the point. And last but not least, thank you very much to Governor Rehn to accept this invitation to come here, to come to the University of Sevilla and to share your time and your thought about Europe with us. The rector of the University of Sevilla is not today here, sadly, because he is in Argentina for a meeting, attending a meeting of the Ibero-American Postgraduate Association. But he asked me, on behalf of the university, give you this greeting of the university. This is just a print of the main door of the university, the tobacco factory, the former tobacco factory, where is the main seat of the University of Sevilla, and we hope you conserve this after you pass in the university. Thank you very much. And now, Johan Sterner, please, will present our proponent for today. Thank you.
Yes, we have the privilege to have Governor Olli Rehn with us. Very briefly, Governor Rehn is the governor of the Bank of Finland, and also representing Finland in the steering board of the European Central Bank. So I think it's only two weeks ago I saw on the Spanish television, you were on the television when there was a decision on the interest rates. Also, very importantly, Governor Rehn has been a commissioner for the European Commission at very, very important historical moments for the European construction. One as commissioner for enlargement, when we had an expansion of the European Union towards the 10 new 10 member states in the Eastern Europe, and not least important, the commissioner for economic affairs when we have the euro sovereign crisis after the big recession we had in 2010 to 14. So it is Governor Rehn has also been a minister in Finland and a member of the European Parliament. So a very broad and comprehensive knowledge of the European project, the European institutions, the European policy, and also national policy. So we are extremely privileged that you are here and can share with us your reflections. Many thanks for being here.
Thank you, Antonio. Thank you, Mari Cruz and Johan. Dear students, dear faculty, dear friends. First of all, thank you very much for the invitation to speak here at the University of Sevilla. It's a great pleasure and honor to share my thoughts about the future part of Europe at one of the oldest and I must also say one of the most beautiful universities in Europe and in the world. And I also appreciate very much the good attendance here today, and I trust that this is not a compulsory course, but I hope that you will get plenty of study credits for this lecture anyway. Actually, it's not my first time in Seville, and I want to tell about the first time here. I've been several times in the city, and in many ways it reminds me of this trip reminds me of my first visit in November 1989, because then also the geopolitical tectonic plates were moving very fast and the world was in a turmoil. In other words, the Berlin Wall came down in November 1989, and it had very significant consequences for the future of Europe, for enlargement of Europe and enlargement of the zone of democracy and human rights and the rule of law in our continent. I checked the date when I was here because I remember that I went to see the World Cup qualifier game between Spain and Hungary. During that trip, Spain won 4-0 and qualified to the World Cup in Italy 1990. Then it was not the world champion yet, but on its way to World Cup and European Championships. And it was a very memorable visit in many ways. But I will not tell you which stadium I went to see the game, so that I don't have to take stand between Real Betis and FC Sevilla. But I was here with my then fiancée, who studied at the Complutense University in Madrid, originally from Tecamachalco, and we did quite a lot of observation of political sociology as well, because we both studied in that field. So we are now facing a change in Europe of a similar magnitude than last 30 years ago. Then the world was moving in many ways forward. Europe was moving forward. The future looked uncertain, yes, but for Europe it also looked exciting and full of promise. It coincided with the creation of the single market, the creation of the euro, and also the cohesion and structural funds were significantly strengthened, which are very important here in Andalusia, as in many other parts of Europe. And by the way, that was also the time when the Erasmus program was started, which has become one of the major EU success stories, and I believe that also here in the audience there may be several Erasmus students. I recall then as assistant of at the University of Helsinki in the political science department that we were not yet members of the European Union, but we were becoming members, so we were eligible for Erasmus. And I remember that, let's say, the more senior professors were not excited about it at all, because it meant more work and a lot of effort. But what happened was that the students and us young assistants, we voted with our feet and pushed for the University of Helsinki participating in the Erasmus program. And I think Erasmus has been very important for European integration, and it has been very important for providing a big boost for education in Europe and the enhancement of human capital in Europe. And it continues to do so. I would like to structure my talk today on 3 parts. That's the title, you see the title here. Vadis, Europe, where are you heading, Europe? Where is our democratic soft power in this harsh geopolitical world? And I will first say some words about the evolution of European integration, underlining our soft power, which means power in terms of the economy, trade, culture, and values. Second, I will say some words about the current security challenges, and I will then conclude third by focusing on Europe's economic challenges, underlining the need to improve Europe's productivity growth and bolster its long-term competitiveness. And I'm more than willing to take your questions, and I hope that we can have a good dialogue and spend time through questions and answers. But I'll start with what I referred to already as a reminder, in a sense that it's sometimes forgotten that it was not only the containment of communism, but also the soft power of the West and the European way of life that brought down the Berlin Wall. Not tanks, but ordinary East Berliners with their bare hands and household tools dismantled the wall in November 1989. For sure, East Berliners were frustrated by the poor living standards and by the welfare gap that kept widening between the East and the West. Yet, while tearing down the wall, they were also destroying a powerful symbol of division in Europe and oppression of people. It wasn't only the material wealth of the West that attracted East Berliners. Equally, it was about the civil liberties and the freedom of choice that they were lacking in their daily lives. And this is, by the way, a very similar situation what happened 10 years ago in Ukraine when the Maidan revolution or Maidan events took place. I remember then checking the difference between Ukraine and Poland, which are neighboring countries of rather similar size, 40 plus million people, and then rather similar level of economic development. What was the difference? The difference was that in 1990, when both were still under state socialism, Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, Poland was part of the Eastern Bloc. Per capita GDP in both countries were around 5,000 to 6,000 euros per year. Then in 2013, just before the Maidan event, and then subsequently Russia's occupation of Crimea, the standard of living had improved in Poland, so that in Ukraine, the situation was such that in Ukraine per capita income was 7,000 euros. In Poland, it was 20,000 euros. So almost 3 times equivalent to that of Ukraine. And at the same time, the Polish people were enjoying civil liberties, democratic freedoms, and less corruption than in Ukraine. So I think it's no wonder that the Ukrainians decided that they prefer the European way of life, not only the material wealth, but also the civil liberties in Europe, because they saw it just across the border in Poland, which Poland had benefited significantly from the single market and the structural funds of the European Union. Well, we know the rest in that region, which is now the focal point in European security. But this is, in my view, important to recall as a background of those developments. And as Johan said, I had the honor to serve as European Commissioner for Enlargement from 2004 till 2010, and I could experience at first hand the birth of a new era then. Every single Eastern European country that has joined the European Union is now part of the advanced economies group as defined by the World Bank, which means that all countries of Eastern and Central Europe in the European Union have transitioned from lower middle to upper middle or high income group in just over 2 decades. Nevertheless, like for Spain and Portugal in the 1980s, accession to the European Union was not only an economic endeavor, but also a way of anchoring democracy and ensuring political stability. Now we can, against that background, we can look at where we are today as Europe and where we are heading. When you look at the global landscape today, we see the rise in geopolitical tensions, especially due to Russia's illegal, brutal war in Ukraine, the several conflicts, tragic conflicts in the Middle East and in Asia, through China's strategic ambitions as a technological and military superpower. And the way we think, the way in which we think about our relationship with the United States of Donald Trump has also been called into question by the political leadership of the US. Here you see some of the major challenges which are dominating economic developments, and as my own background in study terms and research terms is international political economy, so I think it's always important to realize that there is interaction between political developments and economic developments. But today, geopolitics is dominating economic developments with a particular exceptional force. What does this mean for Europe? I would very much concur with ECB President Christine Lagarde, who recently said that it is now a moment for us Europeans when we can decide together to take our destiny into our own hands, and it is a march to independence for Europe, referring especially to the US positions concerning security and trade war. And as you have noted, you have all read the news, I trust, from last night, this morning, President Trump launched a new trade war with very significant tariffs. And I will, in a moment, I will say something about that because we have done some scenario analysis at the Bank of Finland and at the Eurosystem as regards the potential effect of this kind of protectionism and trade wars. But first, on security, supporting Ukraine and reinforcing common defense of Europe is an imperative for the security of the entire Europe. And in terms of economists' language, as we have a large audience of economists here, common European defense is a crucial European public good. In other words, a strong, independent Europe that is capable of defending itself as the European pillar of NATO, but even without relying on external support, has become essential. As we have seen in past EU actions, such as the cohesion policy, Euro crisis management, and the economic recovery package in response to the COVID pandemic, Europe works best when we act collectively by pooling our resources and sharing our responsibilities. Just like in these previous cases, where not all countries benefited equally, but all contributed to the collective good, defense spending should follow the same logic. That is, while some countries may face a more existential and immediate threat from Russia, all of us do benefit from a stronger and more secure Europe. And to be effective in countering threats and building a robust common defense, Europe must create capabilities ensuring interoperability among national defense forces. And this requires also pooling resources and, if necessary, common debt to finance these efforts. The creation of a common defense system is not only logical, but it is indeed essential and vital for Europe's future. At the same time, we must work for more effective European institutional arrangements. And all these efforts, common defense, the green transition in energy and to combat climate change, and digitalization and artificial intelligence investments, all these will require, in my view, a substantially larger budget of the European Union and more streamlined decision-making structures. So the European Union must be ready to act decisively and with unity in these difficult circumstances. Now let me turn to the economic prospects of Europe from short term to longer term. The outlook in the short term is dualistic. On this slide, I have tried to coin to you the recent history of inflation in the euro area, which is basically that we had a 10-year period actually from 2010-11 until 2021 that we had what we called in central banking and macroeconomics lowflation. So excessively low inflation flirting with deflationary tendencies. As economists, you know, deflation is poison to economic growth and full employment. So with Mario Draghi and his leadership at the European Central Bank, we were able to get rid of these deflationary tendencies. Then came COVID and bottlenecks in supply. It was a big supply shock after we had done a massive monetary policy and fiscal policy stimulus in Europe, and inflation rose to above 10%. And you can see that with yellow I have illustrated the increase of energy prices, and the turquoise or blue, kind of blue, is food prices. You can see that these components played a significant role in the total headline inflation, which I've drawn with grey ink. I deliberately have drawn with black ink underlying inflation or core inflation, which is inflation neutralized from energy and food prices, which for us central bankers tells more about the underlying dynamics of inflation. That has been lower, but we could see that the de-anchoring of inflation expectations was a danger during 2021, 22, 23. That's why we had to hike rates. Inflation was brought down and stabilized, and now we are seeing that most measures of underlying inflation suggest that inflation will settle sustainably at around the ECB's inflation target, which is symmetric 2% inflation over the medium term. And since last June, we've reduced the policy rate 6 times, and it is now at 2.5%. As regards future, the ECB Governing Council is not committed to any rate path, but preserves full freedom of action because there is pervasive uncertainty, not least because of the trade war and geopolitical tensions. I might add that this may be relevant for economists, that we used to do what is called forward guidance during the period of lowflation and deflationary tendencies. Then it was important to give a clear message to the public that we are ready to support the economy with strong monetary policy action also in the future, so that people could consume and investors could invest, and thus we could get the economy rolling again. Now we are in a different situation, and because of having this recent high inflationary period and plenty of uncertainty, so we are not engaged in such forward guidance anymore to the same extent. Concerning then trade policy, which I think is the big topic of today, and I dare to say, and I regret to say, the coming months and probably coming years. This trade protectionism from the US side is clearly a major risk to our economic outlook in Europe as well. And I recall that when asked to name one proposition in the social sciences that is both true and non-trivial, the Nobel laureate in economics, Paul Samuelson, when he referred to international trade, he replied that Ricardo's theory of comparative advantage is both true and non-trivial. The notion that free trade is beneficial for the prosperity of all nations is deeply rooted in the economic science and supported by a wealth of empirical evidence. We've done calculations at the Banco of Finland and also at the Eurosystem, which is the ECB and the 20 national central banks, including Banco de España. And here I can report to you, as I have the responsibility for this, I can report to you the Bank of Finland calculations from around 2 or 3 weeks ago. And if I had given this talk, say, a week ago, I might have said that this is probably this scenario analysis provides most likely somewhat excessive numbers because we assume that all imports from Europe and China would be covered by US tariffs. So we have to take this with a certain reservation. Now, since last night, when Donald Trump introduced cross-the-board tariffs of 10% to the rest of the world, including the Pacific Islands, which only are occupied by American and British soldiers, so 10% tariffs for everybody, and then more focused tariffs to the European Union, to China, and other countries of the other jurisdictions of the world. And our analysis concludes that if you take the assumption which you can see on the screen, and you add uncertainty, which is in fact maybe more important in the short term, at least in terms of its effects, then you see quite significant negative effects, so that the world GDP could fall by 0.5% per year. It may not sound a lot, but it is a big effect in the world economy. And there is a stronger impact on the EU and China, which varies probably for Europe somewhere between 1 and 1.5% this year and next year, and for China probably between 1 and 2% in this year and next year. And as said, it is essential to assume quite significant role for uncertainty in this equation. Of course, the countermeasures we are taking by the European Union and what China is taking and other countries are taking will weaken US companies' market positions. So that's the story basically, and the message is that there is no winners in a trade war. Then the question comes, how should Europe react to this? And my view is that in the face of US protectionism, we cannot lie down in the fire, not even in friendly fire. And it's important that the European Union has been preparing proportionate countermeasures in order to reinforce our negotiating position with the aim of achieving a negotiated solution which would be better for everybody. And I have to say that in the current context where there is war going on in Europe, on European soil, Russia's illegal war in Ukraine, the very last thing we need is a trade war between allies. But it's the US that has been starting it. Before concluding, I want to remind ourselves of one strength of Europe, which often is overlooked, and this is that we started some 20 years ago developing a strong network of bilateral and regional free trade agreements with the different parts of the world. I remember those days when we concluded that for the economists, the first best route of multilateral trade liberalization through the World Trade Organization was already blocked by then. We concluded in the European Commission that now we have to make a strategic move. We have to start negotiating actively bilateral agreements. And yes, we've done so in the past 2 decades to the effect that we have, as the European Union, we have now around 45 free trade agreements covering around 75 countries, which means roughly half of external trade of the European Union over Spain, or Finland, other countries of the European Union is covered by free trade agreements, including with many countries in Asia, like the EU-Japan free trade agreement is the largest free trade area in the world, and we have negotiations going on with Australia, India, and Indonesia. The next step, or I should say the current step, should be to conclude the ratification of the Mercosur FTA. In my view, Latin American democracies are natural partners for Europe, and trade agreements help to strengthen this partnership, which should be seen as a strategic priority. And I truly hope that we could in Europe rapidly ratify this very important agreement with Latin America, with South America. So dear friends, in order to leave time for questions and answers for dialogue and discussion, I would like to come to my conclusion now. And I can say that in the economy, the Achilles heel of Europe is slow productivity growth. The current geopolitical landscape is putting extra pressure on industrial competitiveness of Europe. And that's why European industry must strengthen its technological capabilities. And I've been introduced to the technology park here in Seville, and I remember my visit to Expo in 1992. There's a big change, and Sevilla is becoming a very important technology, or has become a very important technology center in Europe. Cutting-edge research and innovation and investments in areas like artificial intelligence will be crucial for Europe, and we must also reinforce European academic institutions at the forefront of global research. So, dear friends, to conclude, today's world is experiencing yet another major transition, like 30 years ago. But now, unfortunately, the world is moving rather in a reverse gear. And Europe's ability to sustain its soft power, its influence through diplomacy, trade, culture and values depends significantly on reinforcing our hard power, especially in terms of coordinated solutions regarding common defense of Europe. This is what it takes in today's quite rough world of unforgiving geopolitics if we truly wish to ensure that the European Union has a successful future. And at the same time, Europe needs to strengthen its economic foundation by finding ways to increase productivity and hence fulfill its true potential in sustainable growth and employment. So in sum, Europe needs to show its capacity for renewal and remain united. Recent months have shown that a common response is more critical and urgent than before. There is no time to waste. At this critical time, Europe must stand together and act with a strong purpose. Thank you very much for your kind attention.
To show us this world is not easy situation, but the hope is in the air, as you said in your first slide. Now you have the time to express some ideas, some questions to discuss with Governor Rehn, and yours the floor. Si alguien quisiera hacer la pregunta o la observación en español, tenemos algunas personas en la sala que son capaces de traducirla al inglés. Aquí, la primera, el profesor Philip, y allí hay otra pedida ya.
Just to break the ice, I have something about 10 questions at least, but I will do just a couple of them. First, you started with, we need more integration. We had the Draghi report some month ago. But still, in the public debate in Europe, I'm not seeing step forward going to this more integration. If you would choose just one point that could leverage the other part that the Draghi report point out to get more integration, which one? Could be common debt, fiscal integration, make some common taxation, more in the economic or the governance. We should build a new governance that will make feel everybody part of Europe and not have 27 or 28 voices speaking every time that we have some challenge. This is the first. And the second is more economics. It was about because the Trump tariff we get last night, we are challenging this new problem, and you said an alternative is new trade agreement with the rest of the world. I have been studying a trade agreement that they're very good in absolute, but it's true that there are loser winners. And usually, for example, I speak about regional Europe, the losers are who get the less complex economy. In that sense, the trade agreement to not create discontent among European regions that we already have for the revenge of getting behind and so on, we could strengthen the complexity of the economy of that region. And maybe we should refocus once again the cohesion policy and try to push the industrial policy on that part of Europe, if you think so, or if we'll come just with the trade agreement that will push this region to make the effort going to more complex economy. So I stop here to not speak too much.
Thank you for your complex question. I don't know if you prefer to take some question in the room and have afterward the answer, or yes.
We have more time to take questions if you take, let's say, 3. So I give shorter answers in total.
Okay, thank you. Even if the question from the Vice Dean put the elephant in the room, ¿no? Okay, thank you. ¿Había otra pregunta allí? He's a student from economy?
Yes, from
Thank you.
ABR English. Moving to other topic,
Business administration in English. ABR.
Yes.
We say ABR.
My question is about the crypto. What's the position on the European Union, and what's your personal position about crypto?
Sir, I congratulate you for your splendid exposition of facts. I would like to know a bit more concerning this, what we see as an economy of force that it is taking and it is developing for all the world, born suddenly from the country that we already know, and or the countries, well said. And I would like to understand a bit more of why Europe still rely on hope about a country that since large time ago, as United States, come sending each time more problems than solutions to the European economy. For instance, the development or the introduction of the, shall we say, the new development, economic development from the 80s through England, and later on with the subprime crisis, and later on with several other problems that came from our allies. So, it seems at first sight that the Europe gets sleeping along the time a bit, because, for instance, this situation, this geopolitical situation, at my site that is developing seems to be economy of force with geopolitical intentions of influence, together with some tech companies that are helping to propel that development. So why Europe slept so long without taking developing technologies equivalent to the United States? Why?
May I ask you and all on yours to be shorter in the question, just to take the time for further.
Thank you.
Thank you. And there is one more here, 3, 4, 5.
One more, yes.
One more.
Then I'll respond. Yeah.
What soft power strategy have European Union do in Ukraine since the independence of Ukraine to the Crimean War?
As you see, without restriction. I think we can stop here with the question, and if you want to, we can take other round of questions.
Yeah, we can. Let's have a answers. Thank you. So thanks very much for very pertinent and relevant questions. And I start with the question by the Vice Dean as regards the Draghi report and focal points in integration and the FTA impact. I think I'm a functionalist, and I believe that form follows function, which means basically that you have to develop institutions so that they serve the purpose, the practical purpose of economic and social welfare and external security of countries and in the case of Europe, of the European Union. I think in the current context we have two major challenges. It's a dual challenge, very much intertwined. The first one is common defense, and it is essential that we rapidly reinforce our common defense capabilities, which requires decisions on financing. And this calls for both national financing, which means you have to use the new EU fiscal rules to provide flexibility in the short term while maintaining long-term debt sustainability. And it also requires European financing solutions like the Commission's proposal of 150 billion euro fund for this purpose. Probably there will be other coalitions of willing, including the UK as well, including Norway, which has quite strong economic resources, financial resources, maybe without Hungary, because Hungary is creating obstacles for the common European solutions. So this is the challenge number one, and it is very immediate. And that also has implications to European integration and our relation to NATO as well. And the second one is that, yes, and related to your second point, the FTAs, I very much agree that, and I know the discussion of Danny Roderick and others as regards the impact of free trade on different regions and different people. Same, by the way, is with the green transition. I mean, we have. I come from a country where there is also some peat production, and peat production is being phased out with climate policies, and it is important that we have a just transition so that we can maintain the support of our citizens. That's why I think the cohesion funds play an important role in this regard, and they should be used for building up future economic possibilities and prosperity. I think Spain is a very good example in this regard, and if you think of the investment through the EU structural cohesion funds, regional funds over decades, you are actually seeing that it is paying off now, in a sense that there is very strong infrastructure. The labor market has been also reformed since 2012. It's more flexible. Employment is higher today than previously. You have quite a lot of immigration in Spain, which has been good for the economy, and very much the cohesion funds have supported the creation of infrastructure, both educational and logistical infrastructure, that has supported the current economic growth which Spain has, which is quite strong in European comparison. Second question on cryptos. I know that let's say I assume that several of you are following cryptos quite actively. So are we. So am I as a central banker. Our view, and I speak here as a member of the European ECB Governing Council, and as a member of the central banking community at large. So I think our view in general is that we are concerned about risks related to crypto assets. And by the way, we don't call them currencies. They are not currencies. They are assets of a certain kind. And one can quite heavily question whether they add to economic welfare, economic and social welfare of our societies, economies, our citizens. So if you invest in crypto assets, you do it at your own risk. Be aware of the risks. There is no reserve, central bank reserve that is backing up the system, and they are not part of the, say, normal regulation and supervision of banking and the financial system. Then there is the question of central bank digital currency, and there is a different position between the United States and Europe here. Actually, on both of these, the Trump administration is introducing what they call stockpile of crypto assets. We are now monitoring whether this will become a real reserve of cryptocurrencies, maybe stable coins which have a link to the dollar system. And if that will be the case, if that were to be the case, then that could create quite significant risks to financial stability globally, including in Europe. I'm vice chair of the European Systemic Risk Board, and we are very intensively following this development because it could create, at worst, it could create systemic risks to the European financial and banking system as well through this channel. And in the current geopolitical context of trade wars, we are seeing that the importance of creating European payment systems not to be dependent only on two cards, Visa and MasterCard for payments, is ever more important, and that's why we want to develop a safer and accessible digital euro, which will provide a monetary anchor in the digital payment world. We are working on that, and we are experimenting on that, and I would expect that this will, in a few years, be a reality as well. Then we had the question on the US effect in Europe, and it's a good question why Europe is not stronger in technological terms than we are currently, and there are many reasons for that. I think if you look at the past decade or 2 decades, we've seen that in the digital economy, Europe was left behind. We are catching up, but was left behind. And the US big tech companies, the Magnificent Seven, from Apple to Meta, they have benefited from venture capital, from abundant venture capital in the Silicon Valley in New York stock market. They benefited from a unified single market in the US and unified culture and language in the US and the entrepreneurial spirit of the US. And for these several reasons, technology companies have grown stronger in the US. We are catching up and we have many strong companies in Europe as well, but I think it's important, in line with the Draghi report, that we will ensure sufficient financing, especially for scaling up startups and growth companies and supporting their internationalization, so that a Spanish company or Finnish company or European company wouldn't have to go to New York or San Francisco to get, or the Bay Area to get funding for its projects. Concerning our soft power strategy in Ukraine, I think we have to really combine both hard and soft power, and the critical thing now is to continue to support Ukraine so that its position is good once ceasefire negotiations, peace negotiations start, so that Ukraine has a real chance of last and sustainable peace. And in parallel to that, Ukraine has a European perspective, and this accession process will help Ukraine to improve its educational system, its public administration, and fight against corruption in the country. I think these are the main elements of our impact in Ukraine for the future. Shall we take, say, 3 questions next round, so we get shorter answers?
3 questions. We have this lady the first.
Thank you for your sharing today. And when you mentioned geopolitics in dominating the economic development, you mentioned China's economic difficulties. Because now I know the Chinese GDP is increasing slowly. Maybe because of the older population, the COVID, but I want to know from the European eyesight, what's the biggest problem of Chinese economy, and the reason, because of the traffic, American traffic policy. Now the trade is impacted by the policy. So, what do you think is the next step between U.S., Euro, and China? What's the next step to have the international trade? Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello. Thank you for your seminar, almost. I would like to ask just 2 very brief but really extensive themes. So the first one would be, what do you think is the future in relation to the entanglement of the euro and the dollar, as far as the the rate policy is concerned? And the second one, do you think that this would be a fair chance to develop our own financial hub, but not in a national sort of compass, but more in a European Union sort of way, like, for example, a stock market, for example, a European stock market, especially if we're going to start sharing, excuse me, especially if we're going to start sharing different debt levels among us. Thank you.
Okay.
Filippo again. There is no
I have
students.
I have the chance to make question about,
Yes,
and it's very related with
it's a great
with the last.
opportunity. Thank you.
Because I worked also in the Joint Research Center for a couple of years, and I worked on the Capital Market Union impact on in our European growth. One of the problems when I was studying that is a lot of savings flowing from Europe to the United States. We export goods, but we also export our saving to there. Can be a turning point, this, that we are going to lose in the exportation, but maybe we can get back our saving, be the basis of this capital market union, use that for more venture capital risk, and try to finance with the more risky capital to our companies. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you. Concerning the first very important question as regards China and our future trade prospects. First of all, concerning the Chinese economy, we are, of course, following it very closely. And I think in economic terms, the biggest problem in China has been the slow reform of the real estate sector. So the property or real estate sector has been in a kind of slow-moving crisis since 2021. Efforts have been made to overcome that, but it is still burdening the Chinese economy. It's not kind of an acute crisis necessarily, but it is clearly harming the economic development in China. Second, concerning, well, from the European point of view, I have to say that as regards trade and investment, we see that technology transfer has been very asymmetric. And what I mean is that we are not satisfied with how China and the Chinese companies are applying WTO rules as regards intellectual property and technology transfer. And that is a continuous drag in our relations. So in order to improve European-Chinese trade relations, it would be immensely important to make progress in this regard. I remember I was leading a Commission delegation already 12 years ago in Beijing, and with Joaquin Almunia, by the way, who was then Competition Commissioner, and we raised this issue with the Chinese authorities. It's still there. Not much progress has been made. Concerning the big picture of Trump's trade war and its impact on the world and international trade, so you can basically see two different scenarios and variations of these scenarios. You can see that the countermeasures that the proportionate countermeasures that the European Union and China are taking, and China is, by the way, discussing with Japan and Korea, South Korea, whether they will have some joint action in this regard. So it remains to be seen whether this will, say, encourage the US administration to negotiate and arrive to a solution which will avoid the 1930s like trade war of very high tariffs, 20, 30, 40% or whatever, so that the increase of tariffs would be rather one digit and not that harming to the world economy. So that's the more positive scenario. That's why European Union has to take countermeasures. The other scenario is that Trump goes all the way with it. He's a believer of tariffs, as he has himself said. He's a tariffs man, and they also see in the Trump team apparently that this is a way of gaining significant fiscal revenues to the United States to compensate the major tax cuts for especially the wealthy citizens. So it is part of the strategy, and I think in this kind of a context, by experience, it is better to be prepared to the worst scenario while working for the better scenario and hope that the reason would prevail in Washington, D.C. and Mar-a-Lago. Concerning the euro and dollar, we don't have a practice by the European Central Bank or Eurosystem or the Bank of Finland to comment on the exchange rate. And the reason is that, I more or less know it's somewhere 1.08 was the latest. Euro has appreciated, as you know, but we don't take stand on that per se. And the reason is that our mandate, our legislative, our constitutional mandate is price stability. In the first place, we have other objectives as well, like sustainable growth and full employment. But our primary mandate is price stability, and we look at, we analyze the exchange rate from the standpoint how it affects on inflation and thus price stability. Having said that, yes, we are also observing the, let's say, the more structural side of things, and you can have you can have two views. Maybe I'm a good economist because the good economist always has, on one hand, on the other hand, if you have 5 economists, you have 6 positions. So if you have these two basic views on the future of US dollar as reserve currency. So one view is that the US dollar has been the dominant reserve currency globally since the Second World War, latest, somehow even before, but it took the crown from sterling, from British pound sterling, latest during the Second World War. And with the Bretton Woods system, it became the dominant reserve currency. And it has sustained major crises even before, like the erosion of the collapse of the Bretton Woods system in 1971-73, when the US Treasury Secretary John Connolly said in a very memorable way to his European colleagues in a meeting that US dollar is our currency, but it's your problem. And still the US dollar survived as reserve currency. Same after the financial crisis, which was originally a US subprime crisis. So I wouldn't count on the US dollar losing its reserve currency status, because there is plenty of network effect and path dependency in the currency systems, whether you talk about trade or you talk about finance. But, and that's the second view, or the other view, that if the institutional foundations of US dollar, like democracy, the rule of law, civil liberties, and the legal certainty of companies in the US were to be eroded, then we might see more negative developments, even quite rapid developments. That's why it's important that we monitor developments as regards US dollar. And how should Europe act in this context? I think within the frame of our primary mandate, it's not it's not our first goal. Our first goal is the welfare of our citizens, and that requires price stability as one cornerstone. But at the same time, yes, it's an opportunity for Europe to reinforce the role of the euro as a reserve currency. If the US dollar is roughly 60% of finance and trade, the euro is around 20%. That's roughly the difference or the respective shares. And for that, we would need a stronger capital market in Europe, so that Europe could become a financial hub, as you referred to. And this is related to Filippo's question as well, in a sense that, yes, capital markets union, or as it is now in a more broad sense called by the new Commission, the Savings and Investment Union, is a very important strategic priority for Europe, so that we could better channel the formidable savings of Europeans to investments in Europe through venture capital, not only through the banking system. And here, and this is my last point on this, it's if I look at the past 10 years, when we discussed in parallel, we discussed the banking union and the capital markets union. So in retrospect, we can see that maybe surprisingly the banking union was easier to achieve. I'm referring to the single supervisory mechanism and all the integration of supervision and regulation in Europe, which has made the European banking system very resilient to crisis. So we have largely achieved this since, for instance, the Spanish banking crisis of Cajas, say 12, 13 years ago. We now have, in Frankfurt, we have a single supervisory mechanism that works with all the financial supervisors in Spain or in other countries, and that's the cornerstone of the banking union. Meanwhile, the capital markets union has been much more difficult, mainly because it requires a lot of quite detailed legislative changes in the member states, including such sensitive areas like insolvency or bankruptcy legislation. So we should continue to work on that, and I dare to say that even if Johan is here on the podium, but I think Sweden is a good example of how you can advance savings culture, so that, for instance, in my country, Finland, we are the neighboring country of Sweden to the east, so we have benchmarked Swedish solutions like the savings investment account, as it is called. In Sweden, you are also compelled to invest a certain part of your secondary pension to the capital markets. And the result is that when we discuss in Frankfurt or in Brussels, we discuss how should we reform our capital markets to create a savings and investment union. We are usually looking at Sweden in this regard, which has a fairly strong risk capital, venture capital market. And that's something that we would need all over Europe, in my view.
Okay, thank you very much. I think we have finished the time. Thank you. Sorry. I think we have finished the time for this meeting, and it was very pleasure having you here. Really an honor for the University of Sevilla from the Faculty of Economy. This walk through the European question, finishing with capital market, but we have go through everything interesting in the European Union today. Even we haven't talked about defense. It's the great problem outside the door. But I think with your last idea about the stability is the idea we have to remain after this speech, this brainstorming. We need the stability to secure the Europe way of life. Thank you very much, and it has been a pleasure having you here. Thank you.